Raise your hand if you yourself have ever felt personally victimized by the girl boss business babe coaching industry. Because same. Today's scam story is no exception. If you have your own scam story you want me to read out here on the channel, the form where you can submit it is linked down below. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Several years have gone by since my experience in the coaching industry, and I'm finally coming to terms with the fact that I was scammed out of more than $50,000 over the course of 1 year. I was about a year out of college and decided that I was going to start an online business that would give me the freedom and flexibility a 9-to-5 couldn't provide. After researching how to start an online business, I quickly discovered the world of online coaching through various boss babe type podcasts and Facebook groups. Okay, this story already we're 2 or 3 sentences in and it feels like I'm reading my own history. I want to know in the comments if you're watching this video and you're someone who has been involved in the coaching industry or you are in the coaching industry currently, where did you first discover its existence? Because for me, it was absolutely podcasts and Facebook groups. I think after I started reading self-help books, I would look up the authors would have a podcast, that podcast would lead me to another podcast, then I'm getting all these Facebook ads, I'm in these Facebook groups, and so on and so on and so on. It becomes like a very quick rabbit hole that you fall into. So I'm curious to hear if you are in the coaching industry or have been in the coaching industry in the last 10 years or so, where was your introduction from? Let me know. At the time, offering coaching services seemed like hands down the best, most profitable online industry, with leading coaches throwing out terms like I made 6 figures in 6 months and 10K months get to be easy. I quickly chugged the Kool-Aid after starting my coaching business. I started off with social media coaching as I had previous experience growing my own Instagram to a decently high number. I figured I could use my experience to help small businesses with their social media strategy, helping them grow and expand their brand awareness on socials. After starting my business, I was constantly listening to podcasts hosted by various business and Instagram coaches so I could learn as much as possible about how to grow my business and get clients. These coaches kept preaching the importance of investing in yourself, and I quickly formed the belief that in order to be successful, I needed to invest in a business coaching program. Oh my God, how many times have we heard this story on the channel of coaches falsely using the concept of investing as a manipulation tactic in order to get you to sign up for their very expensive programs? Curious to see how this plays out for this particular individual, because from stories that I've heard, conversations I've had, often it is used specifically in the context of people buying into very expensive programs that they maybe don't have access to the cash for, as a means of encouraging people to then take out loans, use credit cards, etc. in order to afford these high price, high ticket coaching offers. And yes, investing in specific skill sets or education can be valuable. Please know that it is not the only way to be successful as an online or regular business owner. I probably had about $400 to my name and promised myself that once I signed my first client, I would invest in a coaching program to help me reach the next level. After about 3 months, I was able to secure my first client at about $3,000 US. I had been researching a few coaching containers and got on a few calls for potential programs to join. One day, one of the coaches I had been following posted a story about how over $100,000 of her income for the year so far came from IG stories alone. So I instantly DM'd her about the program she was promoting. We got on a call that same day and I really liked how chill and down to earth she seemed. I signed up on the call for a VIP spot in her group coaching program, which cost around $6,000 for 3 months. It is wild to me reading this story, just how evident, as I've read, story after story after story, I have a whole playlist if you're new here, how similar each of these stories are. And that's not to minimize this person's experience or invalidate the experience. I'm just saying that the more I interview people and the more I read their stories, it is so eye-opening to see how each of us can work with a completely different coach. At this point, after all the conversations I've had, we've probably discussed 100 different coaches on this channel, but ultimately the tactics they use, the packages they sell, the strategies they talk about, they all boil down to the same formula. It is fascinating. It did not take long for the love bombing to start. I had signed another $3,000 client shortly after our call, someone who I had been in touch with for some time, and my coach would say things like,
"You're gonna be my next success story.
And
I can totally see you hitting 10K in just a couple months."
This is exactly what my ego needed to feel special, like this was really possible for me, and I was going to get rich AF from coaching. This is the type of behavior that leads me to have the opinion that this certain section of the coaching industry, where it's coaches coaching other coaches on how to coach other coaches, specifically mirrors the behavior that we see in cults. A lot of these leaders like to use tactics like love bombing to make their clients feel special, to make them feel chosen, to make them feel like they have some sense of security within the coaching container that's going to propel them to
success beyond their wildest dreams.
And I think that this level of flattery, where you constantly feel like, you know, Becky really sees my potential and she believes in me and she thinks that I'm going to be the next millionaire, that kind of environment can really override our ability to think critically. And that's why I think so many of these coaches end up either in significant amounts of debt, where they continue to invest and invest and invest and hoping that they're going to eventually be successful, or they do end up financially successful and they continue to perpetuate these manipulative behaviors because they're basically building a business within an environment where that kind of behavior is being condoned. So I'm being love bombed by Becky, therefore I think that that's okay. I start to treat my clients that way. They continue to pay me, and we're all kind of trapped in this environment under the guise of it being like positive and uplifting, when really we're just using that positivity to manipulate each other or be manipulated. Super fascinating to see, like, read how this is happening in real time. I honestly really enjoyed the program in the first 3 months that we worked together. After the first call or two, we decided that I should pivot from social media coaching to business coaching, since I was essentially helping the 2 clients I was working with at the time grow their online coaching businesses. Keep in mind, these were the only 2 clients I had ever worked with, yet I was calling myself a business coach. I had my coach's permission to do so, so I thought it was completely fine and ethical. After all, the coach is always right, right? Another super common thing we see in the coaching industry that I have probably talked into exhaustion at this point here on the channel: business coaches calling themselves business coaches with no real business experience beyond being a coach that coaches other coaches. And I think this in general is like my biggest qualm with the coaches coaching coaches industry, beyond the fact that a lot of these people aren't qualified, because again, I'm not like the leader of the internet. I don't get to say what does or doesn't quantify as legitimate experience. But objectively, I think that a huge part of the scam that we see in the coaching industry is the false sense of authority that these people create in their online persona just because they simply decided that they were qualified to be doing that thing. And so sometimes, because we're in this environment where we are just blindly following the advice of our mentor, if they're telling us,
you don't need experience in order to call yourself a business coach, you're already doing the thing that you want to be teaching people, so you should just give yourself that title,
we're more likely to just blindly follow it because we don't know any better. And we maybe don't want to confront those feelings of,
this doesn't really feel ethical, this doesn't feel right.
We just want to trust that our coach has our best interests, they would not misguide us, and therefore, if they're telling us it's okay, then it must be okay. And so I can absolutely see how this person would fall into this, because I almost ended up in this position. And I've shared this story before. If you've been here a while, you've heard me tell it many times. But I hired a business coach at one time when I had a yoga business and I was also trying to do coaching on the side. And she had encouraged me to launch a program where I would coach people who were feeling stuck in their 9-to-5 jobs on how to quit that job and open a yoga business. Keeping in mind that I had multiple sources of revenue at this point in time, and the yoga specific part of my business was generating less than $20,000 a year. I was not making my full-time income purely from teaching yoga, but she wanted me to become a business coach for yoga teachers, teaching people how to create a full-time income in their business. And that would be a lie, because I wasn't doing that. And so for me, it was not a good fit. I didn't go forward doing that because it didn't feel right to me, but I can absolutely see how someone might hear that advice and be like, you know what? Maybe I will start making a full-time income if I start telling other people they can make a full-time income. Then it wouldn't be a lie. I can see exactly how you would take her permission as gospel and just go forward and do it. So I have no judgments on this person because I've been in those environments and I've seen it happen. And again, this situation is not unique. We see it happen all the frickin' time. About a month into working together is when I launched my first group coaching program. I ended up generating about $10,000 from that launch that would be coming in over the next couple of months. I felt like I had made it. Behind the scenes, I was super stressed and anxious about this launch, but it was what my coach suggested I did, and I felt like in order to have a successful, profitable coaching business, I had to launch a group coaching program since that's what every big coach seemed to be doing. Towards the end of the first 3 months of working together, my coach started talking to me about how she would love for me to join her mastermind, which was $2,500 a month. I almost felt chosen, and it made me feel like she saw a lot of potential in me. I did voice my concern about not being able to make the payments, as at that point I had around $1,300 in my bank account, since most of the money from my launch was being poured into paying off my initial 3-month program. She said something along the lines of,
well, if you're already making $10K a month,
implying that it was a no-brainer that I would easily be able to pay it off. That's all it took for me to go all in. I later learned that she discussed with her own business coach about whether or not she should allow me into the program since I was pretty much scraping by financially. Her coach told her that if my energy was right, I would be fine. I'm sure at the time when I found this out, I again felt special and full of potential. However, now thinking back to this, I'm like, WTF. Yet another example of the toxic positivity, the cult leader-esque environment wherein you really want your coach's approval, you want to feel special, you want to feel seen, you want to feel validated in your desires, and if this person is telling you,
I see so much potential in you, you're gonna be so successful, and you just keep paying for my programs.
who are you not to believe that that's true, especially when you so deeply desire that success? This is a tale as old as time. I ended up staying in that mastermind for a year, so you can do the math on how much I invested into this program. I really loved it at the time and enjoyed having a support group as I navigated the stressful world of entrepreneurship. I did hit a couple of 10K months, but it was inconsistent. There could be one month where I made $13,000, but others I would make less than $2,000. I remember feeling like a failure towards the end of the year because I hadn't hit 6 figures. This was marketed as a
multiple 6-figure mastermind.
Looking back, this was ridiculous as I ended up making about $70,000 that first year in business, which is a total win in my eyes. Of course, $50,000 of that was poured into coaching, but
you have to spend money to make money, right?
I think if we had like a business coaching bingo card, this story would check off every single box. We would have a full card. Thank you so much to the person that shared this. While I was working with this coach, I simultaneously invested in other coaching programs and online courses to help me level up, since the industry pours down your throat the importance of investing in yourself. At one point, I was working with 3 coaches and was in 2 masterminds. What I thought would help me reach the next level made it overwhelming and honestly a total waste of money. This is something interesting too, and this isn't exactly what this person is referring to, but I'd be curious to hear people's experiences in the comments. I know a lot of the times coaches will have like affiliates for other people's programs or courses, etc. And so you join someone's coaching container and then they're telling you,
oh, Jane Doe has this amazing online course about growing on Instagram. You should join it.
And then lo and behold, it's actually like an affiliate program. So they get a cut of you signing up for that program. And then they're telling you, you know, you need to buy certain books and you need to pay for certain trainings and da-da-da-da-da. All of these things, not to say that they're all affiliates, but it's like, you can't just buy the coaching. You also got to buy into the whole ecosystem of all these other tools and techniques that they want you to do. And I think in my opinion, that's just a means of getting you further and further into the echo chamber so that they have more control over you and the decisions that you make moving forward. I'd be curious to hear if you've been in coaching. Were you encouraged to buy other programs, buy certain books, listen to certain podcasts? What was your experience like? Let me know. There were definitely many red flags that arose during our time working together, but I completely ignored them. In the second part of the year-long program, one of the girls who had signed up on the second half of the year was really struggling with her mental health and needed to take a step away from the program. I told her that it should be fine, as another woman had stepped away early from the program during the first half of the year. I ended up getting a private message from my coach, and she was clearly upset that I had told her about the client who left earlier that year. She said it was different, and that client was hit hard financially by COVID, and she had a brick and mortar business that was on the brink of shutting down. The girl who was struggling with her mental health did take a step back from the mastermind, but instead of being let go from her contract, she just resumed the coaching later until her final payment was made. Okay, so person A wants to leave the coaching program because of mental health issues. The person who's telling this story says, oh, it should be fine because person B got to leave early. Coach finds out that you told person A about person B, gets upset and says,
the only reason person B got to leave is because they had a brick and mortar business that was going to go under if they had to keep paying me.
So rather than let person A leave the program, she goes,
we'll just pause your payments, and when your mental health is better, you can keep paying me and I'll keep coaching you.
This is, again, a conversation I've had so many times on this channel, and I have, mixed feelings about the idea of not honoring contracts. I think in a professional context, if we come into an agreement, you agree to pay me, I fulfill my duties, and then you decide like, oh, I don't have the money, that's one thing. But sometimes in the context of coaching, because it's something we see so often, the no refunds policy specifically, I just think that in certain instances, there should be a consideration of extenuating circumstances. Like if a client is in a really bad place financially, or they're struggling with their mental health, is that really a relationship that I want to force to continue just because you signed a contract that said you were going to pay me? I don't know. And from a business perspective, if one person leaving your program is going to put you in a bad place financially, you probably don't have a very sustainable business to start with. I also realized that I was basically funneling my own coaching clients into my coach's program. I wasn't secretive about who my business coach was, probably because coaches are supposed to let it be known that we invest in coaches too. And at one point, one of my long-term clients who had achieved great results while working with me ended up signing up with my coach instead of continuing to work with me. It was at this moment where I realized it was a total pyramid. And my client was just making her way up the pyramid, as so many do. I expressed disappointment to this about my coach, but she quickly reassured me and said that my client was excited to start working with her and join her mastermind in the next cohort. Of course your coach was excited because she was getting more money and you weren't. I know that this has come up in the comments a lot and I've never actually had anyone confirm it, so thank you for sharing this. But we've often speculated that eventually everyone's got to make their way up, because like, why would I pay Sarah if Rachel is way more successful? Like, I don't want Sarah's advice. I want access to the direct source. If Sarah's getting all her info from Rachel, why wouldn't I just skip her and pay Rachel directly? But similarly, why is Rachel then training Sarah to just create more competition for her? Like, the whole business model doesn't make sense when we all have the same target audience that we're trying to sell to. Very, very messy. As the mastermind came to an end, I remembered there was a final one-on-one call that I was supposed to have with my coach, but she hadn't brought it up. I reached out to her privately about it and we scheduled the call. As we wrapped up our final call together, she told me not to tell the other members about this call, clearly because she didn't feel like scheduling them in, as she had already started promoting her next cohort, even though that call was supposed to be included. I guess the other members forgot about it, so she took full advantage of that and saved herself 5 or 6 hours of coaching as a result. This coach seems so shady, just based on the fact with the story we had earlier with person A and person B, where she's like, oh, I'm so upset that you told person A about person B. And now she's being secretive about something that was explicitly in your agreement to be delivered. Ugh, this is giving the same vibes as my coach, who still owes me that lunch. I'm never gonna let it go. I'm never gonna let it go. As I stopped working with my coach, I noticed she stopped engaging with my social media content, whereas while we were working together, she would engage with all my posts. It made me feel like all she really cared about was the money, and once I finished paying her, I didn't matter anymore. Okay, this right here is a prime example of transactional relationships. I think we see this a lot in coaching. I've heard it a lot from people I've spoken with. I know that my experience was similar. You definitely end up in these like pay-to-play relationships where once you stop paying, then there is no relationship. And so I actually reached out to the individual who submitted this story because I wanted to ask her experience with the other people that were in these programs with her, because again, I want to hear your experience in the comments. But for me, a lot of the peers that I had in these mentorship spaces, once the container was closed and we were no longer in that environment together, the relationships sort of just ended. And I know I've spoken with people who more so were like deep in the coaching industry, and once they pivoted out of the coaching industry, their friends who decided to stay in coaching no longer really wanted to associate with them. So if you've had that experience, please share it. But this was what her response was. I definitely developed friendships with other coaches, and I really felt like I had a strong support group during the mastermind. However, once the mastermind ended and the group chat was deleted, that was pretty much the end of the biz friend group dynamic. A few of them actually ended up hiring me for done-for-you services. We're going to get into that part of the story soon. And I actually just recently finished a project for one of the other women in the group. Funny enough, one of the women from the group, a mindset coach at the time, pitched me towards the end of this group program, inviting me to join her mastermind since I was struggling with so many mindset issues. I said no and that I was taking a break from investing for a while. I was also pitched a few other months later from one of the other women in the mastermind after I signed up for one of her free webinars. Okay, interesting. So you were in this mastermind and then your peers were essentially pitching you to join their programs. Oh my goodness. I've stayed in touch with some of the women, mostly just responding to Instagram stories here and there. I think most of them still offer coaching, but several, like myself, no longer coach and have moved on to more aligned business ventures. Looking back, it was totally paid friendship. I've since found a small group of other creatives that I have weekly calls with, and it's completely free. No head coach dynamic, just bouncing ideas off and holding each other accountable. It's been super helpful and made me realize you don't have to pay to find a good support system for your business. I could not agree more. This is something I have preached endlessly here on the channel. The concept of networking, putting yourself out there, making friends with peers in your industry, and just building genuine friendships with other people who want to see you succeed. The most important thing that I have done in the last 3 years of my business is find other content creators, befriend them, and have people that I can ask for advice from. And I don't have to pay them anything other than maybe I'll buy them a coffee sometimes, but we are friends. And it is not because we all joined the same mastermind container. Thankfully, I ended up stepping down from the coaching industry and pivoted into done-for-you services, which I enjoy so much more. Since it's been years now, I can finally look at the coaching industry from an objective standpoint, and I see just how predatory it is. I was naive and impressionable when I started coaching, and I didn't see how screwed up the industry is. I had such an unrealistic expectation on how fast my business could grow, and when I didn't hit my goals, I felt like a complete and utter failure. Honestly, I think the industry to a degree is specifically designed to be that way. They want you to feel as though, not so much that you're constantly failing or not doing enough, but that the success you could have and your potential is always just one step away, one program away, one course away, one mastermind away, as a means of like dangling that carrot so that you continue to strive to grab it. I'm currently in therapy twice a week, and I'm really starting to heal from this experience. My expectations around money and business are still completely screwed up from my experience in the coaching industry, and I'm working to let go of the beliefs I formed during this time. Hearing you share other experiences and your unfiltered thoughts on the industry has been extremely eye-opening and validating. For the longest time, I tried to convince myself that the business coach I worked with was one of the good ones, but now I can clearly see how many red flags I ignored, how culty the dynamic was, and how she was really no different from the other slimeballs in the industry. Writing this story was honestly really therapeutic, and now that I can accept my experience for what it was, I feel I can continue to deeply heal from this experience and focus on growing my business in an ethical and sustainable way. Honestly, I'm just glad that you have lessons that you can take from this experience, pivot into a done-for-you business model, and then be able to grow that business in a way that feels aligned for you. I know for me, there was a long period of unraveling wherein the way that I would market my done-for-you services, I would find myself slipping back into some of that like manipulative marketing copy. And so that was something I had to like train my way out of. So I know how difficult that transition can be. But once you start to build your new business in a way that feels aligned, it is honestly like such a better mental space to be in. Like I said before, I think this particular story is, when I think of the coaching industry, this is the experience that I think of. You enter the industry with the best of intentions. You just want to create a better life, a better business, financial security, stability, freedom for yourself, and you end up sucked into this really, really toxic environment, while at the same time thinking that you're doing yourself a favor. It is such a mindfuck. I want to thank this individual so much for sharing their story. I really do appreciate it. I know that this is going to help so many people. If you have a story that you want me to read out here on the channel, or maybe you want to come on for an interview, the form where you can submit all that information is linked in the description down below. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this content, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. I want to thank our channel member supporters, particularly those in the Mastermind VIP level, as well as Tom, Harrison, and Suzanne in the Billionaire tier. That's going to be it for today's video. Take care, comb your hair. YouTube thinks you're going to like this video right here, so I'll leave it on screen, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!